issue.
Yes, Wakili, it has been demonstrated that indeed this can be dealt with. I know it's a difficult situation, especially now that we've determined that the governors or the potential governors are protecting their turf. But it has been demonstrated. But I want to know from you what it took to make it possible to now recall members of parliament. When you look at Article 104 and the enabling legislation under the Elections Act, and specifically sections 45 and 46,
yes,
that now enables impeachment. I'd like to know what made it possible that now the legislation has been changed, that now recall is a reality.
Yeah.
And what would it take? Forget about the senators not enacting this.
Yes.
What would it take? Would we go the way the other institutions went in order to ensure that recall was made possible? Do you think that is what it will take?
Yeah, I agree with you. And we must, first of all, appreciate again the architecture of our constitution is where the people are supreme. And when the people are supreme, we created and gave unto ourselves some residual powers, which we previously never had, that can be utilized to hold our leaders to account. Some of those residual powers, and of course it is in furtherance of Article 10 about the question of transparency, accountability, the rule of law, democracy, good governance, human rights, social justice, equity, and equality, is the ability for for the people either to hold their president to account, to hold that's the executive to account, to hold all the legislatures to account, and the county governments to account. That is why we created the provisions of the recall of members of parliament. That if you do not conform to that which is desired in the constitution, that is to legislate, to oversight, and to represent the people, then the people do not have to wait for the 5 years to end so they can then vote you out. They can recall you midterm. But now, when this matter went to parliament in 2012 under the Elections Act, it was made very difficult by the parliamentarians for the people to recall their MPs. For example, while you can hold the president to account through a process of impeachment being launched in the National Assembly and subsequently going to the Senate, for me to be able to remove a member of parliament, I have to go to the High Court, and the High Court must first of all make a declaration that this person, this MP, has not lived up to the tenets and the expectations of the Constitution, and therefore is liable for removal under the recall clause. And the thinking, of course, was good thinking, because if you look at the impeachment of a governor or the impeachment of the president or his deputy president, it has two tiers. The National Assembly and the Senate. And the third tier perhaps will even be the High Court. But now, the MP is just seated there in the legislature or in the assemblies, and there is no other place where you can go to have his petition being launched.
Yeah.
That is why it was then wise for them to introduce the petition in the High Court, for the High Court, first of all, to make a finding that this person has breached these provisions. Then subsequent to that finding, then you move then to the AACC, to the IEBC. Because IEBC, in the process of the recall, cannot act as an arbiter. It cannot act as a judge.
It's a go-between.
Yes, it's just a conveyor belt of the process that has begun and commenced. So the thinking behind going to the High Court was good thinking. The only fault with it is, again, time. That you cannot recall 12 months after elections and 12 months before the next subsequent election. You cannot recall. Again, that is a conundrum that we have been invited into. I don't understand why I can impeach my president the first day he takes oath for breach of the Constitution and violation of the same, and I cannot impeach the member of parliament the first day he takes oath. So those are some of the legal anomalies that we need to deal with, so that the members of the House, be it the National Assembly or the Senate, will be held to account. For example, when the people spoke and said we do not want the finance bill, if they were legislating for and on behalf of the people, why had they to go and insist on that legislation? You know, that is basically saying that you hold in contempt the person who has given you the power to legislate. So those are some of the legal anomalies that we need to bring into conformity with the realities of the times of holding people to account. And that is when we are being then invited 14 years later to do an introspection and an evaluation of the Constitution. Has it lived up to its expectations? You know, I am surprised that instead of us going to evaluate whether the Constitution has lived up to the expectations, now the doors of Fungamano are opening up again. Not to discuss the gains and to celebrate the gains of the Constitution, but to go there and lament that the Constitution that we enacted has been violated and infringed and defiled by the political class.
Even as you say that, Wakili, I would have to ask then to whom is this lament being made? To whom? You know, because here I am, I could be a child crying, and the person who's going to give me is my father or mother.
Yes.
And the person I am complaining to is not my father or mother.
Yes.
How do we expect that person then to be able to do something about it? Or who should the complaint go to?
Again, that is a tragedy, and that's a very good question. Even if we lament, who listens to us? Who is going to take up these lamentations? Who is going to implement them? And what is the procedure? Again, that is where we fall to the political trap. That if I was desirous of changing a particular provision in the Constitution, the process is a political process. I need to have half of the counties endorsing my move or my bill, and then I also need to have the Parliament and the Senate. And as an individual like City and I, we may not have any influence in the Parliament. So at the end of the day, you are told, hey, kama Raila ataki, hii kitu haiwezi pita. Kama Ruto ataki, hii kitu haiwezi pita bunge. You see? Because the people we took to Parliament have no allegiance and loyalty to the people who elected them. They pledge a loyalty to their party leaders, not knowing or not understanding that the boss is not the party leader, but the persons who took you to Parliament.
Isn't it worse? Because I think they actually do understand.
Sorry?
And I think that's the tragedy, really, that they do understand that your boss is not your party leader, but that your boss is the person who took you into that position by virtue of their vote. I think they do understand
you
that.
Don't overrate
and that's
them.
Why
some of them do not even understand why they're in Parliament.
Wakili, why do we have that saying? That
some of them are actually morons.
There's a verse in the Bible that says that knowing that something is wrong and doing it is actually a sin. And for me, that's the tragedy. That you know that this thing is not right. But you still go ahead and do it.
Can I tell you why they don't understand? If, for example, you look again at the architecture of our Constitution, and I wish we had an opportunity to breathe life to this Constitution, it would solve much of the problems that we have. We have the minority and the majority side. The minority and the majority side are fused by the functions of Parliament. They may be the majority or they may be the minority. But their work is to legislate, is to represent, and to oversight. Notwithstanding whether you're in the minority or you're in the majority. That is to mean Ishonga should be asking serious questions why actions have not been taken by the relevant state organ in respect to the people who are killed. Because that is the work of the majority to oversight government. But when they are elected, they think they have become part and parcel of the executive.
They don't think, they know.
They know they have become.
The practice.
The practice that they have become part and parcel of the executive. But that is not the constitutional architecture. The constitutional architecture is the minority and the majority are fused in their functions, in making sure that they oversight government. But when you hear them speak, you'll think that Ishongwa is holding brief for the president, or Rupio Andai is holding brief for his party leader when he was the minority leader.
But then, Wakili, is this then not what you've just said, the reality of not our politics, but of our situation?
This
is our lived reality. Because the moment we accepted that so long as one can get away with a misdeed, then that misdeed is no longer misdeed. It is okay. And we have accepted it. Now, the executive in this country, even with our 2010 constitution, still attempts to have the same powers that the previous presidents who didn't have this constitution. And it appears that those whom we elect see the constitution as a hindrance to their progress.
City, you could not have diagonized the problem better than you have. And I wish they could just listen to what you have said. For them, this constitution is not an emance. It's a hindrance. It's clogging their desire to do that which is wrong and that which is bad. Whereas the constitution creates a roadmap of building and rebirth of a nation. But that is not what is happening. For them, they consider the constitution as a drawback. Hii ni kitu mbaya sana. For example, why should Mr. William Ruto go and make a pronouncement that NYS will be trained on how to use firearms? If you have no intention of converting them into a militia, or you have no intention of recruiting them into the mainstream. What he's simply doing, he want to unleash thugs into our society. Unless he's going to tell us how is he going to resolve that problem. That roadside declaration was stopped by this constitution. But you know, the tragedy again is, we are dealing with a person in the name of a president who never supported this document and who has never read it. I am convinced beyond reasonable doubts that Mr. William Ruto has never read a single clause of this constitution.
What did he swear?
He swore to defend a document that he does not understand. And that is a tragedy. That is why if people go to exercise their sovereignty under Article 37, they are met with police brutality. That is why people are abducted for exercising their rights. That is why you go and make roadside declarations. Because Mr. William Ruto, and that's a tragedy, does not understand this constitution.
Now, hold on. On that last thing that you said.
Yes.
That if, according to what you're saying, if he doesn't understand the constitution, then I'm seeing you already drawing the parallels between a misunderstanding or under-comprehension of that. And that is why we see these different threads of things happening.
Yes.
That's why the persona of a leader and the way in which they operate is extremely important.
Exactly.
Because everybody else feeds off of that energy. Everybody else is looking at this one thing and saying, well, if this happens, then I can do this.
Yes.
If this happens, then I can do this.
Exactly.
So if there's a miscomprehension at that level, then whether it is impeachments, whether it is legislation,
it always goes south. And that is India shida tuko nayo hii Kenya. That we do not evaluate our leaders on the basis of their merits and their ability to execute and to live true to their words and their deeds. We elect them on the basis of who speaks the best English, who speaks the best rhetorics, ni nani anashikanisha sana na wananchi, but we never get time to evaluate them. If you look at the debate that is going on in America today, and I was listening to Barack Obama when he was attending the convention for the Democrats, you realize that these guys are speaking about substance. Again, when you listen to Mr. William Ruto on the other side, and he's a serving president, you realize who ni jamaa. He does not know hana mbele na wala hana nyuma. That is why he will go and launch projects left, right, and center without understanding that people will go back and evaluate whether these projects are actually genuine or they are just white elephants.
But Wakili, on the subject of whether the president understands the constitution,
he does not. Yes, that's what I'm convinced. Don't convince me otherwise.
No,
yes.
I'm not even going to try to convince you.
Yes,
I'm just going to make a statement. Somebody who goes about his business the way the president does, I would argue, is somebody who actually understands the constitution. He understands exactly what the constitution is meant to do.
Yes.
Because the amount of effort that he and those who are in the executive, the effort they make to convince us in word and some deeds that what they were elected for is actually what they are doing. And yet the reality is the complete opposite. That is not the actions of someone who does not understand the constitution. Well, those are the actions of somebody who understands it fully well, understands the consequences, and that is why he had a town hall at KICC the other day. He understands it very well.
Which brings me back to my other point, that's why for me it's a tragedy and travesty. Because you do understand it, you know what it requires you to do, and yet we still see things going in the other direction. For me, that's the problem.
Because it's a hindrance.
Yes. You can see.
Let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, do not be convinced that political swindlers can make a presentation when they make their presentations, and political spin doctors, when they make their presentation like what we were doing in KICC on Sunday, is an understanding of the Constitution. Is a failure to understand the Constitution. For example,
is this not two sides of the same coin?
That
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That it is not an understanding, and I'm saying no, it is. You see, what was he trying to put across in meeting these young people?
He was spinning. He has become a spin doctor.
Precisely. That spinning has an element that we must not lose sight of. He actually physically went, organized that meeting. Why does he need to give the impression that he's placating or listening or addressing? Why bother? For somebody, why go into all that problem?
You see, why had he to do that? Because he's firefighting. The policy is already in place. He's coming to convince the people after the fact.
But Wakili,
conviction should have been
if you are firefighting, it means you understand the fire.
He does not understand, because before you get to this fire, you must involve the people through the public participation.
So your point, that the he should have begun where he's ending.
He should have begun where he's ending. But we would not have been having this hue and cry.
He's ending it. Let's take the tour of Nyanza, for instance.
Yes.
It isn't the first time.
Yes.
We saw President Uhuru doing this.
Yes.
It seems with the practice of our politics.
Exactly.
That when you want to show goodwill towards people who are supporting you purportedly.
Yes.
Is you visit their area.
Yes, and you purport to give projects.
Actually, you just mentioned them.
Yes.
And if you have the wherewithal, you even inaugurate some.
Yes.
That is our practice.
Yes.
And people seem happy with this.
Yeah, because we have not taken time to liberate our people from this mess.
Do our people really want to be liberated, Wakili?
Yes.
This is a question.
If you have seen the kind of the clamor that is now arising, that is now there, people want to change.
Which people specifically?
Well, we have been called to order by the Gen Zs, and I must give the credit to them. So that any person who does not follow that path, then you'll have to, the laws will have to fall where they lie. And may I say that hii katiba yetu hakuna mali inasema ati projects zinapeanwa na rais. When he says, I am going to give you this, I am going to build, you are building as who?
Okay, hold on. This morning, 2,000, what is the number?
2,800.
2,800 jobs are being already asked of the president before he begins his Nyanza tour. Teachers, right? Yeah. Jobs for teachers, isn't it? Yeah. So the areas they're asking. It's one of the things they're asking for.
Who from the president?
The people are asking the president that as he's coming,
yes,
he should be coming.
But you
with
see,
those jobs for 20,800 of them.
But you see, has it been assessed on the need criteria?
Wakili,
let me.
The point you're making is not only logical.
Yes.
It is the correct position to take.
Yes.
But the reality is this.
Exactly.
If we still have a political leadership and a population who believe that the president has the purview and has the ability to dish out
jobs.
goodies, then, and we can't get our people's mind out of this.
I think progressively we'll get there. Progressively you'll get there. When the Gen Zs were out calling Mr. William Ruto to order, at least everybody was convinced that this is the right way to go. And we have not lost that spirit, and we shall not lose it. Why? And then you have heard the Gen Z saying, nyinyi watu amuta kupiga kura, tutachukua mpaka hizo IDs zenu. Why? Because they consider us and their parents as a source of the problem this country is having. Why? Because city will sit there and be convinced that the president can issue jobs, that the president can dish out jobs, that the president can allocate projects.
Actually, he can. Because
no. You see, the unfortunate thing is the Gen Zs and the millennials are 28 million strong. You, the people who have been making these wrong decisions, will be overwhelmed by the desire of the Gen Zs and the millennials and the X to do that which is right, and you will conform to that particular call. Whether you like it or you don't like it, you'll be compelled to conform to that new order.
This brainwashing begins long before the president, because the first thing that people of Nyanza were told is that we have often lost out of opportunities in government
because you're not in government.
Because you're not in government.
Yes.
So then we cross over to the government.
Let me tell you, Ken.
This is what the president is coming with. So the brainwashing starts
Ken, let me tell you,
then.
when we enacted this new constitution, We wanted to divorce ourselves from those particular political rhetorics. And that's why we said Parliament shall be the body that shall be bestowed with the power to allocate resources. Mr. William Ruto has no resources that he can allocate to a particular project. It has to trickle down from Parliament. He has no goodies that he can give you. And we shall continue telling the people the truth. That when he comes and tells you that I'm going to give you 2,800 jobs, it's a lie.
To employ 2,800.
He has no capacity to employ. It's a lie. When he goes and tells you I will allocate money to this particular project or a road or anything, it's a lie. The money belongs to us. It is us to allocate the money. If you look at Article 201 of the Constitution, it creates the procedure for allocation of this money. It's not Mr. William Ruto. And that is why he does not understand the Constitution. That's why he keeps on saying, "Itawapatia kazi, unatupatia kazi ukiwa nani?"
Actually, Wakili, I'm going to give an analogy here. Have you, when you first went to the university,
yes,
did you ever find a very strange phenomenon that you'd find footprints on a toilet seat?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, I understand what that person was doing and what he was trying to avoid.
This is somebody who is accustomed to squatting.
Yes.
That there is a seat and they're meant to sit on it.
Not appreciated.
Precisely. So we have a constitution.
Yes.
Swanking, new, good.
Yes. But being implemented by people who are accustomed to squatting.
Yes.
Yes, that's a tragedy again.
You give them a good thing, they squat.
Yes, they squat.
And you're saying, Chief, you're supposed to sit on this thing.
Sit.
This is I'm supposed to squat.
They're going to squat. And even it's even precarious.
Yes.
Because it's raised.
Yes.
So balancing on it
is much
genuinely tricky.
Yes.
Now.
So what? Draw the parallel really quickly, CT.
I think he has done it. that the Constitution is being implemented by people who are accustomed to squatting. And they, of course, when they squat, they mess.
Completely. You see, the point is, so long as our mind is still on the old Constitution.
Yes. The pit latrine.
Yes. Yes. The pit latrine.
The village pit latrine.
The village pit latrine.
Yes.
This particular new Constitution is even confusing because partly we don't actually believe that the things that are there are actually real and that can happen.
They can happen, CT.
I know they can.
And they will happen in our lifetime.
I know that, not they will happen. They're already happening.
Yes, in our lifetime.
As you watch. But
yes.
The tragedy is people see it happening and they still don't want to believe that it's actually happening.
Yes. And that is why you will see Mr. William Ruto authorizing his foot soldiers to meet protesters who are just holding a phone and a bottle of water and a kitambaa with firearms, with bullets, with water cannons, with tear gas. Because it does not respond to the dictates of Article 37 of the Constitution. But you want to tell him that there is the desire and the fire that burns in us that you cannot put out with any water. There is this desire that burns in us, the desire for change that you cannot even put out with tear gases.
Okay.
There is a desire for change that will have to happen in this country that will not be silenced by even bullets. And then we are saying we shall overcome this tyranny. We shall overcome bad governance. We shall overcome impunity. We shall overcome this bad behavior and bad manners in governance.
It'll happen.
We shall overcome.
That's a good note to end on. Wakili, the words will be heard and the conversations must continue.
Thank you.
Thank you for being our guest this hour. More conversations in the future. It's 8 a.m.
Imeisha.